All right, let's talk about it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Screen. I am your humble DM, Tim. And today we're going to be talking about the Light of Xaryxis, the adventure that came with the new, well, not so new now, but the fifth edition Spelljammer expansion. Um, it's kind of this campaign is kind of an interesting one, and one that I definitely have mixed feelings about, because I absolutely love D&D as a space setting. And so when the announcement that Spelljammer was coming out um came out, I was absolutely stoked. I was so excited to see what they came up with. And I kind of feel that, as many people have already stated, that they really fell short with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a good expansion. I would recommend to people, if they are interested in Spelljammer, then definitely pick it up. But having said that, certain things are definitely missing. The biggest issue, for me at least, was the fact that there is no mass ship to ship or ship scale combat rules. Everything is based around the character scale. So you can't have a large scale fleet engagement, for example, with multiple ships fighting each other, which I think is a real missed opportunity for this kind of thing. But with the Dragonlance book coming out, and they're meant to be having like a mass combat system, maybe we'll see something in that. But regardless, we didn't get it for this. But anyway, the Light of Xaryxis. So back to what we were getting at now. The Light of Xaryxis is an interesting campaign. It takes place on a unnamed world. That's probably one of the most interesting things. It's not really meant to be set on, say, Torel or Greyhawk or one of the established worlds. The idea is that you're supposed to kick off your players on an unknown world, on a coastal village. And the adventure kicks off from there. But I'll quickly run you through the introduction so you know what this is all about. This story revolves around the characters' efforts to save their homeworld from an attack by an empire of astral elves. The attack is underway when the adventure begins. After taking refuge aboard a spelljamming vessel, the characters head for the stars to discover who is responsible for the attack and how they can save their world. During the adventure, the characters encounter many space-dwelling creatures, some of which become companions on the party's voyage. The characters also meet Princess Zendali, an astral elf who is embroiled in a power struggle with her twin brother, Prince Zelith, over who will rule the empire that currently threatens the character's world. With or without Zendali's help, the characters must assemble an unlikely alliance to strike at the heart of the astral elf empire. The characters encounter many grandiose locations as the adventure unfolds, including an asteroid city known as the Rock of Brawl, an imperial citadel of the astral elves which orbits the star called Xaryxis. I should say, not including. So, as you can see, it's as it was intended to be, or how it has been described, it's very much a Flash Gordon pop science fiction adventure. An evil empire out in space is threatening your world, and you've got to go out and stop them. Pretty cool, right? Basic, very, very cool, very basic adventure. So, chapter one kicks off. Well, actually, no. Let's actually go through it. So, the main villain of this storyline are the Astral Elves. Now, just as a quick context for the Astral Elves, when the elves left the Feywild, some of them went to Torel and Greyhawk and other places. The Astral Elves went to Wild Space. Being on the astral plane, they don't age, and so they are very, very long lived. And because of that, they see the lives of people that can die, basically, as lesser. So what they have done, they have lived for so long that their star, Xaryxis, where they built their empire around, is dying. And so they have worked out a way to siphon off life energy from worlds that they land these seeds on, feeding it to their star in order to prolong their empire's life. So, pretty nastiness, as most villains have, but in the context of what they're doing, as I always like to say, or as the saying goes, every villain is the hero of their own story. They don't see the lives of these lesser people as worth saving, and in order to keep their empire going, they are destroying other worlds. So they're evil, but they have their reasons. Not sticking up for them, but that's the reason why. So at least they have a not just a evil intention. They're actually doing it for a good reason, trying to keep their empire alive. Whether that's a good thing or not, that's not up for us to decide. Or maybe it is. That's part of what the adventure's all about. So, chapter 1, you find the players having woken up after these seeds, and I'll show you a bit of the artwork here. You see there. So the seeds of the as the seeds of Xaryxis, they're called. So these have been the astral elf ships have been dropping these all over the planet, and one of them lands in a local bakery. The adventurers go to investigate, and they find that these vines start springing out of these seeds, and these vine blights, but a variant on the vine blights. These are astral vine blights, come out and start attacking people, and so there's a massive panic, and everyone flees towards the dock, and that's where you get the first encounter. The first major encounter is you basically fighting your way through a bunch of brigands that are preventing the civilians from getting on board the ship. And if you can successfully get through the blockade, you get on board the ship. But because this is a low-level starting adventure, I think you're meant to kick off at... you start at level 5, so that's where you kick off there. So being at level 5, you're going to be you might be outmatched by the enemy. So if you manage to not actually defeat the brigands, then there is a get out of jail free clause for the DM. Basically, one of these ships will fly over the top of you, lower a rope, and get you on board, and then you zooms go off into space. An interesting thing about this book, though, is it's actually broken up into chapters. It's meant to be episodic. Now, I found when I ran it, it didn't really work that way because I played it with my characters being much higher level, but also they were very determined to get out of this place because I dropped them into this adventure by taking them out of the world that they were from. Basically ripped them out of one adventure and dropped them into this adventure, so they had to get home. So they were kind of wanting to speed run it. So if you have players that are very, go, 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 let's just keep moving, you'll find you'll blow through this a lot quicker than what the writers intended. So the first chapter ends with you guys, with everyone getting up into space and you coming across an astral elf ship. The astral elf ship attacks the players' ship. They board, you fend off the attack, and you make your way for the Rock of Brawl. So the whole second chapter is just the fight against the astral elves. Like I said, very short chapters. You can spread them out by adding in a bunch of random encounters, but a lot of people I know don't really like to do that. I'm kind of one of them. I'm not really a fan of random encounters, but whatever you need to do, if you feel the adventure is running short, that is definitely a way to do it. The third chapter involves the players coming across a busted up nautiloid. And so you board the busted up nautiloid and find that it has already been looted quite heavily, but there are still monsters on board. This is one of the things in the campaign that you'll find, if your players aren't really interested, you can actually skip completely over it. There's a lot of stuff in this book that I found you can actually skip over, which will, yeah, your mileage may vary, as they say. So, a way to actually get your players on board, what they've done is there's meant to be a jolly boat with a human in there saying, "My friends are all trapped on board," and then when, of course, they get on board, this person turns out to be an alien with a polymorphed ability, and rah, things happen. But if you're not really keen on going that way, one thing that I would suggest you do is say that there is something that the ship requires, like it took damage in the battle, and so it needs, like, say, spare parts to repair the spell jamming helm or something like that, like a little bit of fluid that you can find in, like, nautiloid breeding tanks, just a little bit of something, a MacGuffin, just to force your players onto the ship. The nautiloid itself, it's a pretty cool little encounter. The main monster that you come across, which I think is really cool, is this nasty thing, which is a big bug that eats brains. It's called a Nethulag, Nehthalggu, Nethul. And like Mind Flayers, this thing eats brains, but what it does when it eats a brain, it stores the brain in its body, and it actually gets more magically powerful the more brains it has inside of it. So when it kicks off, it starts off with 8 brains, and so it can only do things that it can do with its 8 brain abilities, but it can get up to 12 brains in its body to get even more powerful spells. So depending on the level of your party, you can increase the number of brains this thing starts off with. After you complete that chapter, you come finally to the Rock of Brawl. Now, the Rock of Brawl is pretty cool. It's a well-established location in the... where is it? In the Astral Adventurer's Guide, the main book for Spelljammer. It actually has a complete breakdown of the different locations, as well as NPCs you'll come across and whatnot. But if you're not wanting to make this place like a big hub for your party to hang out at, the only real location that they have is Large Luigi's, which is a beholder that runs a tavern similar to the Yawning Portal, except it doesn't have a big hole in it. There are adventurers from all over the astral space, and the characters are told by the captain of the spelljamming vessel that they have escaped on to speak with Commodore Crux, who is a Gif who has had dealings with the Astral Elves before, because at this stage, of course, you know that the Astral Elves are the ones that have attacked your world because you ran into them in orbit. So you've come to the Rock of Brawl looking for help. So the story up to this point, fairly straightforward, and it works. So once you get to the once you meet up with Commodore Crux, he informs the party that, well, actually, I'll use the block text here. A fleet of astral elves visited the Rock of Brawl a few days ago before launching the attack on your world. The elves gave fair warning to various captains on the rock, urging them to steer clear of your world, lest their ship be fired upon. The elves undoubtedly have left spies behind to make sure their warnings were heeded. Best we continue this chat aboard my ship. The problem that I had with this, just in terms of like world building, is that if these elves are known for what they have done, they've been around for a while doing this. People know, Crux included, that's part of his backstory, that the astral elves have been genociding worlds for centuries. Even possibly millennia, just for as long as people can remember, in order to feed their dying star. And they come to the Rock of Brawl and say, "All right, we're going to blow this place up. You guys keep away, otherwise we'll shoot at you." You would kind of imagine that, other than the current group of adventurers, that people would sort of go, "Well, hang on, this is kind of bullshit." Is there like no like the Spelljamming Academy, like the prequel to this storyline. Are there not people out there like the United Federation of Planets or whatnot that would actually do something about this? That was part of the story that I thought was kind of weird. But the reason that they've done that is to maintain the sense of urgency in order to get the characters to the next part of the story, which is to get on board Commodore Crux's ship, the Second Wind. So you make your way with Crux through the Rock of Brawl. There are random encounters that can occur if the party is spotted by the Astral Elves and are attacked in the streets. But if you can get to the Second Wind without any real hassle, you meet up with the new NPCs, Feladra and Mr. Flinch. Mr. Flinch is a Hadozi, one of the flying monkey people, and Feladra is a tiefling. She's renting the Second Wind currently from Commodore Crux, and Crux informs her that she needs the ship back, and she's annoyed with that because she still has like a few months left on her lease. So you have to do some negotiating because Crux is broke at this point. He spent all of his money drinking alcohol because he's very sad and depressed about what happened in his backstory. We'll discuss that later. And so you have to negotiate with Feladra. You can either beat the crap out of her and take the ship by force, and if you do that, then you'll need to have one of your party members be the Spelljammer on the ship. But if you manage to pay her what she wants or talk her down, depending on how well your negotiation skills are, you get the ship, you get on board, and then you set sail. The next destination that you are heading to at this point is that Crux has a plan that he wants to go and find and basically attack the Astral Elf Citadel, but he doesn't know where it is, and so you head to a friend of his known as Topla. Thank you. You head to a friend of his known as Topla, or Topla's Tower. She's an astronomer, and so she has an observatory on a floating asteroid. You go and visit her to get the map. However, immediately after you leave the Rock of Brawl, you get attacked, and you are attacked by a jellyfish that has a nice-looking blue lady in it, or a blue man. I never really worked out what he's meant to be. I think he's meant to be they're meant to be androgynous, but known as Hastian. And this character comes up to the Second Wind and teleports on board using a Dimension Door spell and announces, "Heading to Topla's Tower, are we? I don't think so. My friends in the Xaryxian Empire don't want you meddling in their affairs, but forgive me, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Hastian. When the elves came looking for a suitable world to nourish their dying star, I suggested yours. It isn't every day I get to witness the destruction of a planet, and I promise you it will end beautifully, even if you are not alive to see it." And so this is the first, mustache-twirling villain that you come across in the campaign. But this encounter only really has one purpose, and that is to extend the campaign, to slow the characters down. The jellyfish that Hastian is riding on has an ability known as a jammer scream, and what that does is it has the ability of turning off the spelljamming helm of the ship that you're on, thus stranding you in space. So regardless of how the fight goes, if Hastian defeats the party is slowed down or dead. But the party is supposed to win this fight, because as soon as Hastian goes down, the creature lets off the scream and bugs out. And so you've got to make the checks to see what happens. If the helm is disabled, then you have to go on to the next section here. If it's not, you get to make your way to Topla's Tower. If the helm is disabled, The party has to sit around on their asses for a while until a pod of seafaring whales shows up, and you've got to lasso one of them and have it tow your ship to Topla's tower. Either way, you get to Topla's tower. How you get there, either by dealing with Hastian or dealing with the whales, it doesn't really matter. And I kind of think it. I didn't like it all that much. I kind of felt it was a little bit contrived that this person just shows up, twirls their mustache at you, and slows them down. But either way, you still get to Topla's tower. But it's just a matter of whether or not you get there by whales or by magic. So, again, your mileage may vary on this. I kind of thought that was a little bit dumb, but regardless. Anyway, the next destination is Topla's tower. And so once you get to Topla's tower, the idea there is that you are looking for a map, which is a magical map called the Wild Space Orrery is what it's called, which is kind of cool. The way that it's described, basically, when you get to a system, you unravel it and it shows you in holographic form or illusory form the star system that you're in. So it actually maps out the systems as you get to them, which is very, very useful. Especially when you're trying to navigate your way to different systems. So in order to get that, you have to kill a big shark that is hassling her on her asteroid. You do that for her, and then once you take out this space shark, she gives you the orrery, and then just as you're leaving, because you've discussed everything that's going on with the astral elves and whatnot, or at least Commodore Crux has, she actually flies over to the ship and says, "I have an idea about someone who can help you in this in your adventure." And you then head off to find the next major encounter, or the next group, the Vampirates and Captain Grimzod. Grimzod is an old flame of Topla's, and he has no love of the astral elves, and so she thinks it's a perfect fit for this adventure. And so you come across a massive graveyard of ships. This massive battle is going on. There are different classes of vessels and a lot of astral elf vessels, and you come across this really badly busted up galleon, which is it is known as the Last Breath, and it is Captain Grimzod's vessel. Grimzod is meant to be like very, upper eyebrow, very much a swashbuckling vampirate, but he doesn't have one hand. However, his hand that he lost has been animated and sits on his shoulder like Thing from the Addams Family. Immediately, as soon as you meet up with them, he recognizes Topla on the bridge of your ship, or the deck of your ship. He comes over and he comes over to your ship, and immediately as he gets over to the ship, Mr. Flinch, the monkey man, the Hadozi, he gets possessed by a ghost, which is one of the members of Grimzod's crew. The crew mutinies and buggers off with his ship. So then you've got to chase his ship down, and his ship runs away into a nebula. And so what you have to do with his help, he has a special ability where he can touch the deck of the second wind and make it invisible. It's an ability that the vampirate captain has, to touch a ship and make it invisible. The fight then occurs. Basically, you sneak on board their ship, and you've got to wipe out his crew of mutineers, because pirate code, you don't deal with mutineers. And he says, if you help me get my ship back, there is a weapon on board that you can use against the astral elves. So that's meant to be your incentive to help him out. So, and you can't attack his ship at range because you need what's on board the ship, and his ship is filled to the brim with alchemist fire. So you can't fire on his ship because a stray shot will just blow the fucking thing to pieces, and you need the weapon that is on board his ship. Again, you may have characters that don't give a shit and will completely blow the fuck out of the vessel if they have the means to do so, but that's just for the DM to work their way around. Then the plot line, the plot really thickens, because once you have defeated the crew of the Last Breath, the weapon that he the weapon that it turns out that he has isn't actually like an object, it's a person. He has captured the princess Zendali, and she then has to convince the party, or tries to convince the party, that she will make changes. Like, her brother overthrew her, or like, she's actually the rightful heir. Her brother actually sent her off to your homeworld, or the player's homeworld, to die, so that it was the wording is that where is it here? Okay, I'll just read this whole thing here. Basically, what she says is this: we both want the same thing, revenge. As my father lies on his deathbed, my scheming brother, Zelith, denies me my birthright. He seized control of my father's navy, banished me from court, and left me in the clutches of his sycophants. He orchestrated the attack on your world, bombarding it with astral seas harvested from Xaryxis, our dying star. Once the crystal vines have drained all the energy from your world, they will discharge that energy into a beam of light back to Xaryxis, replenishing it. Zelith instructed his minions to deposit me on your world so that as I died, my energy could contribute in some small way to the Light of Xaryxis. Fortunately for me, my ship was disabled and boarded by pirates. Help me become Empress, and I will undo the damage Zelith has already caused to your world. So, this is basically, you've got all your NPCs, you have the princess, you now have a course of action. So, to stop the destruction of the home world that you come from, or the players come from, you need to make sure that the princess can overthrow her brother or get rid of her brother. So you have the good guy, the bad guy, okay? Once that's all done, this is where the plot gets kind of dumb, at least in my opinion. I think this is where the book really falls short. Now, that was chapter 7. There are 12 chapters. So the first half of this is like, building up to how everything is going works, I think. Yeah, there are a few little issues, but establishing the world and everything that's going on and the course which the party will go on, I think that works kind of well. The execution, not so much. Because what happens next is Crux says that at this point, Crux is actually being really, really melancholy, and the party members are meant to. It's actually a thing here says, "What's wrong, big guy?" And so the parties find out what's going on, and he says that long ago, Commodore Crux tried to destroy an imperial fortress in the Astral Sea, but his fleet was routed by the Elven Armada. Crux's flagship was one of a handful of vessels to escape, only after it suffered terrible damage from Prince Zelith's solar dragon mount. Crux lost many comrades that day, and his hatred of the Xaryxian Empire is equaled only by his disgust of his own cowardice and failure. And so you find out that Crux is he's meant to be very, very boisterous and sure of himself up to this point, but now that you know what's going on, he's starting to have doubts. He also absolutely hates Captain Grimzod, and so at this point, he says you can either kill Grimzod or he will not be captain of the ship. So this is where the party gets to pick someone from the group to actually be the captain, and he just falls back and becomes a regular NPC. However, he then informs the party that he has an ally out in Doom Space, which is near where the Xaryxian Empire is, who has been trying to rally forces into a coalition to go up against the Xaryxian Empire. And so as soon as you come to Doom Space, this is where I think was such a stupid thing. It says here, a silvery haze thins as the ship enters a system that appears to have no sun. The ship glides between colossal fragments of smoky grey crystal, remnants of an outer shell of fantastic proportions. As silent and lifeless as a graveyard, Doomspace gives new meaning to the phrase dead of night. After 3 days of travel through the labyrinth of crystal shards, you catch sight of a yawning black vortex lined in dim light. A black hole. So Doomspace is a system that is a black hole at the center, and there's moons and planets orbiting around it. The wild space orrery shows the black vortex with 2 planets slowly spiraling around it. The system also has 12 moons, one close to the vortex, one orbiting each planet, and the outer 9 moonlets. There, says Crux, pointing at the biggest outer moons. Orin is just 7 days away. With luck, that's where we'll find my old comrade Warwick Blastomov. His mission here is to create a unity out of chaos. Knowing him, he's done a bang-up job. Okay, so you head to this random planet. You drop down into the atmosphere of the planet. You stop about 60 feet above the surface of the planet, and Mr. Flinch, he says to Mr. Flinch to lower a ladder and says, "Who wants to come with me to find Warwick?" Now, the idea is that the orrery not only is able to show you where the planets are, but also specific people, because how else are you supposed to find Warwick Blastomov, this one GIF on this planet, which is, quite vast, you would think. And so it says here, right, as the ship descends towards the moon, you see a wasteland dotted with pillars of rock. Arcs of lightning leap from pillar to pillar. The ship heads towards the plateau that is 100 feet tall, a mile wide, and covered with jungle foliage. Knowing that a ship can't land safely, Crux gives the order for the ship to hover just above the treetops and shouts, "Mr. Flinch, drop the ladder." On the command, the Hatter Z releases one end of a rope ladder and extends it 50 feet to the ground. The jungle below is alive with the sounds of wildlife. "Who shall join me on an away team?" asks Crux. Okay, so if the party doesn't want to go with him, he'll go on his own. But of course they want to go with him. This is an adventure. Almost as soon as you get down the ladder, a shot rings out, and seconds later, a uniformed gift bursts through the foliage with a musket in one hand, a look of panic on his face. "Apologies in advance," he shouts as he makes his way to the rope ladder. Pellets of radiant light fly through the air, narrowly missing you as several starfish-like plant creatures creep out of the jungle and advance threateningly. Now, this is basically a scene like out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, how Indy runs towards the aeroplane with the natives attacking the ever-loving shit out of him with all their darts. It's basically like a scene right out of that there. The problem that I have with this is just the logistics of finding this one person on this one planet so precisely at the moment that he is going to be attacked. It's just the convenience of it. It smells like J.J. Abrams writing it. The man loves his conveniences. However, once that happens, you basically just go up the ladder and you're gone. So this whole section, to me, it's kind of unnecessary. It just pads things out. But you've got to go to this other planet and have this attack. You can either fight off these plant people, but also, if you stay on the planet to fight off the plant people along with Crux and everyone else, immediately after that attack, the party gets attacked by 2 bullets. At this point, the party's only meant to be about level 7 or 8, and so realistically, this is like a TPK trap, because all it takes is one party member to go gung-ho, and you'll know it'll happen. They'll go crazy. They'll get separated out from the party, wanting to, kill these plant people or whatnot, and then get mobbed by these bullets. And then one of them will go down. Another person will go out to attack them. They'll get mobbed and go down. And by the end of it, the entire party's been wiped out. The smart thing is, of course, to go up the ladder, but, very few party members that I've ever DM'd for or been in run away from a fight. If a fight's happening, they're going to want to see it out to the end. And this section, the Artux of Urin, is a trap. And it's a really bad entry in the book. This is a section of the book that I would actually skip over because it is completely unnecessary. Because what he tells you, what Blastimov tells you, is that he's failed to create the coalition. And so the party has to go to the planet Vokath, to Vokath Station, to talk with Vokath, who is a man who sells weapons, jamming helms, and ships to anyone who is willing to buy them. He also has a fighting pit, and he holds a lot of weight and a lot of sway with the inhabitants of Doomspace. So realistically, Blastimov should be there talking with Vokath as well as the other people that are on the station in order to form the coalition there. And so if you have the party skip over that and just take them straight to Vokath and then have have Blastimov say his line that he says, I failed to create the alliance. They seem more interested in fighting with each other than against the astral elves. You can bypass that whole trap, and it also keeps the story going to a more interesting locale. Again, this is my opinion, but when I ran this, I cut that whole section with the plant creatures and the bullets right out and put Blastimov straight onto Vokath to get them there, because the whole thing about the Vokath station is that it has the fighting pits. So if you want that line as you see they are more interested in fighting against each other, you can have members of the different ships fighting each other in the fighting pits when you get there. So it doesn't actually break the plot to actually cut that bit out. And like I said, I would definitely suggest doing that because it is a trap that will get your party killed. All right, moving on. The next chapter is Chapter 8, Arena of Blood. And here's the thing as well. The speech that Blastimov gives is in the Arena of Blood chapter. So again, you're not missing anything if you skip over the Artux of Urin. So it says, my efforts to create a coalition have been unsuccessful. The factions of Doomspace have little interest in battling the Xaryxian Empire, which seems only a distant threat to them. They would rather fight amongst themselves. You saw for yourselves how prickly the Arcturans were. My peaceful entreaty must have offended their war gods. So again, you can spin this any way you want. Just adjust the text there, and the plot doesn't suffer anything from it. Just the fact that you have to go to a planet to find one man, it didn't sit well with me. Unless like I said, unless the Ori has the ability to locate individuals, which means that this device is probably one of the most powerful scrying devices in the entire Dungeons and Dragons universe. And if you have one of these things, you can just find anyone on any planet that you go to. So it's kind of a two-edged sword there. But anyway, so the only thing these factions seem to have in common is their hunger for ships, spelljamming hams, and weapons, things I can't provide. War is everyone's native tongue here, and the ones most fluent in it are the McCains, the blue giants that make a killing by selling ships, helms, and weapons to other factions in exchange for raw materials and resources. But all is not lost. I've learned that the factions are in debt to a McCain named Vokath. He might be willing to help us for a price. So the idea here is that you visit Vokath and you entreat him to give you an audience with the different party members. Because when you get there, there is a group of Aarakocra, a group of Artux, a group of humans, a group of Surans, which are lizard folk, like space lizard folk, a group of Thrycreen, and that's it. So there's like these 5 different factions. 5? 6. Sorry, I can't count. So you go there, you talk to Vokath. Vokath is uninterested really in what you have to say because he thinks that you're just whining. He's one of the lines that he says that I absolutely like is, you can say, I can't say you look particularly important. So speak and don't waste my time. And then, as the party tries to get his help. Oh, enough with the me. Uh, I'll arrange a private meeting with you with the faction leaders if you can survive 3 battles in my arena with no rest between them. Representatives of the factions will be watching, so fight well. An excellent performance might win their favor. So you have to fight in the arena for 3 rounds without a rest in between. No easy feat when it comes to the current power level of the party. So the idea is that once the party either gets defeated or they are or they are victorious, Prince Zelith shows up, smashing through the glass, riding on his dragon like Batman from the original 1989 Batman movie when he jumps in to rescue Vicky Vale. That's the picture I imagine. And of course, the party comes to a stop. The festivities come to a stop, and he wants his sister. So, the next chapter. If you try to attack Zelith or his dragon, he will just obliterate you. But the thing is, though, that Zelith isn't actually there. He's using the mislead spell. So the Zelith on the back of the dragon is just an illusion that he can see and speak to. So there's no way that you can actually harm him at this point. And so, also at this stage, the party's so badly beaten up that the dragon's going to destroy them anyway. So again, anyone who is smart will not attack the dragon. Not always going to happen, but hopefully. At this stage, the princess gives herself up. She uses her mislead ability to drop down to where the party members are. She takes off her ring. She drops her ring into the sand, whispers to someone that it's buried there, get it because you will need it later on. And then she goes back into her body. She goes to her brother. She flies away, and that's where this little section ends. At this stage, because of the way that everything has gone and the fact that Prince Zelith has ruined Vokath's party, he gives the players, the audience, with the different faction leaders. And so you've got to convince these faction leaders to join up with to create a massive fleet in order to go up against the Astral Elves, in order to get there before the coronation happens. Because once the coronation occurs, the Light of Xaryxis will absorb the energy from your homeworld, and that's game over for the party's adventures. This is, again, where I think the writing is kind of crap. Because you've got to convince there are only 5. You've got to convince the humans, the Aarakocra, the Thri-kreen, the Ortuk, and the Saurians to join up with your cause. Now, depending on what you how you did or what your different persuasion checks or whatnot, there are certain groups that don't like each other, so you've sort of got to do things for them. But there's a thing here called attitude adjustment, which is really weird. So for the humans, in order to make the DC to convince him better, and bear in mind, this is for him to donate to your cause 3 galleons and crews, including himself and his own ship as part of the 3. You need to give him, or to make him feel like he trusts you, you need to give him either a set of artisan tools, a healing kit or a potion of healing, a musical instrument, or a magic weapon. One of those things, not all of those things, one of those things. So you can give him a bundle of rags that you use as a healing kit, and he will be more inclined to help you out. The Thri-kreens, they want a spelljamming helm or at least 30 days worth of food. That's a more reasonable ask, in my opinion, because they want something that is actually very, very valuable. The Aarakocra, they actually want the wild space orrery that the party has, or a navigational chart of another wild space system. Again, something more reasonable, because they actually want to do some exploring after this. And the what is it? The Artuk want you to challenge one of the Thrycreen representatives to a duel, or you have to do an arm wrestling match with one of the plant people, because they actually they worship war gods, these plant people. So you've got to make him more inclined to follow you. That I kind of think is stupid, because if the party has actually succeeded in defeating everyone in that arena, they should already fucking respect them. So that, again, I think is really, really silly. And the Saurians want 500 gold pieces of gems, art, or objects, or a magic item of uncommon rarity or better. So they just want money. Again, I can kind of see that, but a Spelljammer is worth, 45,000 gold. You can bribe him 500 and he'll feel slightly better towards you. I just don't really see it happening. So the attitude adjustment thing here, I can kind of see it's designed for parties that don't really have all that much in the terms of charisma. But here's the kicker, okay? You go through all of this chapter, and ultimately it doesn't fucking matter, because no matter how many ships you get, the next chapter plays out exactly the fucking same. Because if you succeed in getting everyone together, you get 5 Shrike ships, 5 Lamprey ships, 3 Space Galleons, 2 Hammerheads, 5 Squid ships, 6 Wasp ships, and 4 Scorpion ships. You get a pretty significant fleet together, all right? So you would think that you'd be having a massive space battle, which I think is what they were going for. But as I stated before, there are no rules for large-scale ship-to-ship encounters. And so, regardless of what happens, the number of ships that you get doesn't matter. But there's another thing, because the next chapter is called Space Invaders, where the party is trying to sneak on board the Xaryxian citadel, right? So there are at least there's meant to be 30 astral elf ships flying around the citadel when your fleet rocks up to engage them. And it specifically states in this whole thing here that the fleet that the party brings, no matter what happens, is supposed to lose. And as soon as the battle begins, the flagship of the Xaryxian Empire, the Xaryxia, makes a beeline straight for the ship that the party is on. So they somehow know what ship the party members are on. And even though it specifically says the book makes no assumptions as to what ship the party members are on. So they might not even be on board the Second Wind. They could be on board any number of these ships, but somehow the Xaryxia knows precisely where the party members are. And they make a beeline for them in order to board, and then you have a boarding action fight where you either overpower the guards. If by some chance they are actually loyal to the princess and you show them the ring, they will escort you to the citadel, or you can defeat them. Like they'll defeat you and take you prisoner if they're loyal to Prince Zelith, or you can defeat them and use their ship, Star Wars style, to sneak on board. That's what the chapter, that's what this section wants to happen or expects to happen. But here's what really should happen. If you remember when you met up with Captain Grimzod, he has the ability to make a ship invisible. So realistically, all you need to do is have him do that again. The ship becomes invisible and you just fly through and get to the Citadel that way. And then immediately once you get on board, you either fight your way through to the Citadel, you sneak through to the Citadel, or you get captured and get escorted. Either way, all the stuff that you do on Vokath doesn't matter. Because once you have Grimzod, he can just invisible you straight to the Citadel. but also the fact that it doesn't matter how many ships you get. You could get 3 galleons and go up against all 30 of those astral elf star moths. Only the one ship will ever go after the player's ship. They will board them. They will either escort them there, they will capture them, or they'll defeat the star moth, and then your players, bluff their way through on their ship. It's a really stupidly written section of the book, and it infuriates me because they were building up for this awesomely epic space battle encounter, and they fucked it up. It was such a missed opportunity to be able to have the party command an entire fleet of ships against them, and even if the fleet is defeated, just have them say that the astral elves take the party members prisoner because they've heard of them with everything that's going on. But the fact that no matter how many ships you get from that whole Vocath section, the entire last chapter, all that bit there was completely pointless, because no matter what happens, you still get on board the Citadel. And you don't need all those ships. All you need is Captain Grimzod, who is more than happy to help you out, and he's already invisibled a ship once. And the fact that he can't do it, why couldn't he do it again? He's already done it once to the ship that you're on. He has to be able to do it again, unless you want to come up with some contrivance. Just really fucking stupid. Anyway, so the next chapter, once you get on board the Citadel, is chapter 11 and 12, called Crowning Moment and the Light of Xaryxis. Basically, you get to the Citadel, you see all the people in the streets, they're all celebrating the coronation. You either sneak into the Citadel of Light in time, or you either get escorted into or sneak into the Citadel of Light while the coronation is happening. But also, it's the burial of the king. There's a massive beam of light coming from the Citadel, which hits a crystal at the top of the Citadel and goes down into the center of the Temple of Light. And this is basically the light from the sun. When you when they put the body inside the light, and the light shoots the person up into the sun, the king goes into the sun, he's ascended. And then you have the villainous moment where the prince says to his sister that, well, it is now time for us to decide who will be ruler, but you do not have your ring, and also you do not have your champions. Where is your ring, sister? And this is when the party's meant to go, we have the ring. And she goes, yes, there is my ring, and I name them as my champions. And so then the prince names his champion, which is the Zodar, which is this big, beefy thing made out of obsidian black armor that weighs 1,500 pounds, and can float. It's immune to the radiation from the sun beam thing. Regardless of what happens in this instance, again, this is sort of a get out of jail free clause, because the thing about a Zodar is it has the ability to cast one wish in its life. So if the party loses to the Zodar, it has a thing, all hail Prince Zelith. The crowd chants, all hail Prince Zelith. Zelith glowers at you, pathetic fools, hurling yourselves into the void without the slightest inkling of who or what is out there. If you knew anything about the true nature of Wild's Place, anything at all, you would have hidden from it in terror. Pity I can't destroy your world more than once. Okay, so he's all, he's really, really evil. But if the party defeats the Zodar, then the priest voice rings throughout the temple. The Zodar is defeated. All hail Emperor Zendali. Zelith lets out a strangled cry as his sister steps towards you, a wild smile on her face. My ring, if you please. As Emperor, I must reward my champions for this triumph, and abruptly, her smile turns into a sneer. Guards, seize them! So either way, if you go with the prince or the princess, either way, they're going to destroy your world. It's always been a ruse. So then the final chapter kicks in, where the Zodar, having found out what like the true nature of these astral elves, which you'd think, being alive for as long as it has, it probably would have known what was going to happen. And a Zodar apparently can only ever speak 3 times in its life, and it can only ever cast the wish spell once, and if it does so, it turns to dust. So if it's lying there beaten and broken, or it's victorious over the party, regardless, this is what happens. A resounding supernatural voice issues from the Zodar, astonishing everyone. Take the ring of stars into the heart of the star where it was forged, and your world will be saved. At this pronouncement, golden light spills from the Zodar's eyes and washes over you. The Zodar then crumbles to dust. Basically, what the Zodar does is it casts Wish, gives everyone in the party full hit points and a greater restoration spell, so they're all back up to full fighting strength, and then the fight is on. There are 12 astral elf honor guard and the prince and the princess to deal with. Either way you want to work with it. But it says here, hurling a royal ring into the heart of Xaryxis will destroy not only the star, but everything in this system. This is what the priest cries out. So the objective here is to get the ring off either the prince or the princess and put it into that beam of light. That will basically destroy the star and stop the astral elf threat forever, essentially, the Light of Xaryxis. So this is where the story gets either awesome or terrifying, because essentially what is happening now is that a group of adventurers have come from their home world and traveled across the stars to commit genocide. Because there's no other way for this story to actually end. Because when the characters have at least one ring of the shooting stars in their custody, they must declare whether to destroy Xaryxis to save their world and others like us, or spare it, thus sealing their world's doom. If the characters seek the counsel of their allies, use the following information to guide those conversations. If you ask Commodore Crux, the GIF is adamant that Xaryxis be destroyed. He reminds the characters that many worlds they have destroyed. Flinch, the Hattersy, recommends mercy for the astral elves. He explains that his concern is not for the people of Xaryxis space, but for the characters, because he is seen how the desire for revenge can bring great souls low, a remark that shames Crux into silence. Grimzod heartily endorses the destruction because he hates them and he's a cool vampire guy. Starborrow, the tree, if for some reason the tree ent that is actually mounted on board Commodore Crux's ship, how the fuck that's supposed to happen, I don't know, because he's actually part of the ship, unless you manage to actually crash the second wind into the Citadel, which I suppose you could do if it's invisible, but regardless. He says that the destruction of Xaryxis would end the lives of all creatures in Xaryx space, an incalculable loss in Starborrow's estimation. Topla says if blowing up the star is what it takes to save the character's world, then Topla's all for it. She also observes that the opportunity to witness the death of a star is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And Warwick says... Warwick reminds the characters that good soldiers have fought and died to give the characters the chance of saving their world, and hopefully they'll follow through. So, really, the characters, it's an impossible choice. They either have to commit genocide and destroy the entire Xaryxian race, the entire astral elf race, or, at least those that are here, or let their entire world die. I ask you, what would you do? It's really not much of a choice when it comes to it. But the thing is, though, that someone has to actually deliver the ring into the star. You can't just throw it in, apparently. And so if none of the party members want to do it, then Grimzod, that marvelous son of a bitch, he actually volunteers to step into the Light of Xaryxis and take the ring with it. And he remarks on the irony of a vampire killing a son rather than a son killing a vampire for the first time in history. And he also gives his crawling claw to Topla and says, never let it be known that hang on a second. Yes, he says, I hope you all appreciate the irony of a vampire flying into the sun. He then entrusts his crawling claw to Topla, saying, never let it be said that Grimzod Garganhale failed to give a lovely lady a hand, which I kind of like. Um, and then the characters must succeed on a charisma check to convince Crux to let Garganhale have the ring and to make the Doomsday trip, which I don't fucking get. I mean, because he's been nothing but helpful this entire time. This is just Crux being racist. But yeah, once you put the ring into uh the beam, it goes up. The Xaryxian star goes supernova, and that's where the chapter ends. You return, and that's where the whole campaign ends. Everyone sails home after committing genocide, and the astral vines that were feeding on their world crumble into dust, and that's where it ends. But yeah, like I said, it started off really good up to the point that you meet up with Grimzod. Like once you get Grimzod and the princess, from that point on, the story kind of falls apart in what they expect the characters to do, or at least for their motivations. I get the episodic nature that they were going for, but honestly, the way that the whole thing plays out, the fact that they end up committing genocide in the end is just really, really messed up. And again, they're doing it for good reason, of course. They're doing it because they don't really have a choice. These astral elves have been killing countless worlds over the millennia to feed their dying star. They needed to be stopped. I just wish there was a better way to do it other than just supernovaing their sun and just giving them the finger and flying off, Star Wars Death Star style. Literally a Death Star. Anyway, so that's the Light of Xaryxis. Uh yeah, I think it started off good, had some uh good intentions, but just really dropped the ball at the midway point. Especially that whole thing with the gathering up of the fleet, because like I said, it's pointless. There's no reason for it to happen. You can go in solo, and the way the book is written, the exact same thing happens. The party just gets captured and escorted into the Citadel of Light, where the princess says that they're her champions. And again, you don't need to have the fleet because Grimzod can sneak the entire party through with his invisibility power. So, anyway. Actually, let me just find out what the name of that is called. Yeah. So, the Vampire Captain, it's just called Ship Invisibility. Recharges after a short or long rest. A ship upon which the captain stands along with all creatures and objects aboard it becomes invisible to creatures not aboard the ship. The captain must concentrate on this magical effect to maintain it, as if concentrating on a spell. And it lasts up to an hour, and the effect ends if the captain leads the ship. It's not restricted to a specific ship. And once he does it once, which he does in order to sneak up on his own ship for you to get the princess, there's no reason for him not to do it at that moment during the space invasion. It's just it's just something that when I realized that, and the thing is that when we were playing through it, my party actually they skipped over that bit because we were playing it at higher levels, when Grimzod's ship started to go away, they just dimension doored onto his ship to fight his party. So he didn't have a chance to invisible the ship, but they thought, can we make our own ship invisible? And then Grimzod volunteered the information. Because why the fuck wouldn't he? It's just a really bizarre choice that they made to completely cut out the ability to have massive space battles when they bring in a massive fucking space fleet for them to have a space battle. All it does in that chapter is to describe you describe the battle going on in the background while they're fighting the astral elves on board the Xaryxia when it boards them. But anyway, I'm rambling. If I was to give a score to this, I would say this is, like I said, it's a 5 out of 10. It's okay for the first half. The ending just really, really falls flat in my opinion. It's a lot of logical logical issues with it. What I would suggest, like I said, skip over the Arun of Artuk bit. Just put blast them off on Vokath. And if you really want to have a ship-to-ship battle sequence, like a massive fleet engagement, what I would suggest doing, and this is what I actually did with my party, although they went for the sneaking mission anyway, but if you want to have the big battle, break the different fleets up into squadrons. Basically, what I did is you combine all of the stat blocks of the ships into a single block. So 3 space galleons is like one thing. Like, you use the swarm rules basically. So if you have full hit points, the things do the full damage. If they have less than half, they do half their damage. And you do that across the thing, and you basically divide the total number of the you divide the total number of the hit points of all the ships. You add them all together, and then you divide them by 10. So because, like, if you have 3 ships together, you're looking at, like, a couple of thousand in terms of hit points. So you divide that by 10, so you have like 150 hit points, and then all the damage that a weapon would do, you divide that by 10. So if it does like 60 damage, it only does 6 damage. But then you have the weapons, rather than doing them as individual attacks, you do them as barrages. So what I will do is I'll put a link in the description to the stat blocks that I created, so that you can actually run a massive ship-to-ship encounter in the Space Invader section. Because, like I said, that was really something that the Spelljammer book needed, and I think everyone has agreed that that was really sorely missing. But anyway, that's it for me. I think I've rambled on long enough. I hope this made sense to people and at least was somewhat entertaining or interesting and answered some questions. Yeah. So, until next time, everybody, remember to keep on blending. Bye!